what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and this is going to be the actual video where we test Warlock double legendaries in game. Finally, in this week's PTR build, Blizzard did indeed finally enable double legendaries, being one covenant based one and one non-covenant based legendary. We're going to be looking at basically Night Fae and a bit of Necrolord today. If there's relevancy to Kyrian and Venthyr, or they change them, we'll take a look at them. But for the most part, we know that the Kyrian one's just decent. It's okay. There's not really any crazy interactions between the Kyrian one and the Venthyr one for really any spec or any like double legendary combination. Venthyr's good in massive AoE. Kyrian's just decent at what it does, but pretty bland and relatively generic. Not saying you can't play them, but you know, Necrolord, Night Fae have, I would say, the most interesting and unique interactions and, you know, combinations as far as those covenants are concerned, and they're probably the best heading in the next patch. So now, if you guys like to acquire any weak auras, profiles, or add-ons to see here, once again, they are all indeed available to you guys for free on my Discord and on my Twitch. If you want to swing by, hang out, grab them, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. Also, before we get into the video, one more thing, one massive shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys a million times again for all the support. Heads up, the 9.2 Warlock spreadsheet should indeed be going live. The plan is tomorrow night, Friday night at the absolute latest. I was sort of waiting for Blizzard to put in some loot from the raid and open up mythic boss testing and double legendaries. It's all available now. So the spreadsheet is basically about 3/4 of the way done. Should be completed tomorrow or Friday. The tier 3 Felgar rank, my Patreon or higher, does indeed get early access to that. So with that being said, let's get into it, talking briefly about the legendaries that are available for each spec and the ones that I feel probably going to gain some value, and then look at some actual gameplay. All right, so starting off with Destro, this is the Reign of Chaos, Wilfred's, Night Fae, Decaying Soul Satchel, Roaring Blaze, or sorry, Reign of Chaos build. We're playing the 4-piece obviously here, so every 10 shards spent gives you either a free Chaos Bolt or Rain of Fire. When you cast the Rain or Chaos Bolt, you get a Blasphemy Infernal for 8 seconds. Now, I talked a good bit about the Blasphemy Infernals last night in the video they put out. They're large purple ones. If you didn't watch that, feel free to take a look. Basically, if you proc them, they do indeed bring in 8-second Reign of Chaos window with them. If you proc them during your actual Reign of Chaos window, they bring an additional 8 seconds onto that window. Now, I've typically been getting about 2 procs, so 16 extra seconds in each window because, hey, you know, 2 Infernals, 16, 8 plus 8. I live in Florida, but I can do basic math. So, yeah, now under Lust and PI-based effects, you very well might be able to get a third one. It's hard to tell, but I think it's possible. So, I'm going to be honest, I've actually really enjoyed playing this build in single target. Destro still needs buffs. There's no way around that, but I've still enjoyed playing it a good bit. So, basically, it is what you think it is. We're just going to open up here, Kata, drop our Infernal, pop my Ruby, Conflagrate, go into our actual field here, our Soul Rot, pop our Dark Soul and start launching some bolts, right? So the effect is stacking here, 2 stacks, 4, should be about 6 in a second here, and you push right into 10 stacks. You'll see the Blasphemy Infernal come down relatively soon here. There's your 6 stack, 2 bolts here should be 8 stack, 10 stack. There's your free bolt. I'm overcapping on charge, so many Infernals are down. There's the Blasphemy. And this is where it gets pretty crazy. 1 bolt, 2 bolt. We have about 7 seconds left on our Reign of Chaos window right now. We're just gonna miss it. With actual decent procs and like other haste-based effects, I've typically gotten 2 extensions of my actual Reign of Chaos window there. Certainly you'll get it under Lust-based effects. It feels good. Now, Destro's still really undertuned. The damage it puts out here, honestly, like with our major CDs procking 2 or 3 back-to-back, is actually pretty abysmal compared to other specs and things. But I think the actual bonus feels much better than it did last month and a half before they added, you know, the when you had the RNG in it, right? Now it's guaranteed every effect gives you this, you know, every 10 shards gives you this proc, right? Which is really cool to see. There's basically this build with Reign of Chaos in Wilfred's in single target versus the Cinder's Roaring Blaze build. Cinder's Roaring Blaze has typically edged this build out a little bit in single target, and they've both been pretty much the same, basically a wash in 2 target cleave settings. But I think with the actual 4-piece interacting with Reign of Chaos and no real benefit to playing Roaring Blaze, like with the 4-piece, you obviously get an Infernal, some more cast, which is great, but you get basically the same effect playing Reign of Chaos with the bonus of having Reign of Chaos proccing. I don't really see a world where Reign of Chaos and Wilfred's does not edge out Roaring Blaze and Cinders, but we'll see where it goes. So we're going to swap to Madness here from Wilfred's. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm a fan of Madness. I've wanted it to work since honestly alpha and beta. It's cool that both Cinders and Madness were taken from, I believe it's Nighthold, Destro's Nighthold 2-piece, 4-piece bonus, and for the most part, Cinders has seen a lot of play, probably most play as far as Destro's concerned, but Madness is sort of fallen by the wayside. Now, the cool thing is, the bolts that we cast will indeed be faster than the bolts we cast playing Wilfrids, but the unfortunate part is that our Infernal will now be 3 minutes, and having a 2-minute Infernal versus a 3-minute Infernal, Destro is a different spec. When you have 2-minute Infernal versus 3, it just feels like a different spec. It feels good at 2 minutes. It feels bad at 3. It's sort of in a similar spot to where AF was when you had 3-minute Dark Lair and 2-minute Dark Soul. It just felt clunky and odd and awkward. And once again, like with Wilfrid's reducing Reign of your Infernal, which brings Reign of Chaos in a large window, which brings more Shard Gen, which brings more Chaos Bolt cast, which fuels more 4-piece procs in that window. I don't really see a world where Madness ends up beating out Wilfrid's, but hey, you know, we'll run sims when APLs are ready for 2-piece, 4-piece, and tuning is done, and we'll go from there. So now I haven't actually done really any pulls here with it, so we're just gonna go into it and see how it actually feels. Yeah, drop this, drop the rock, pop my ruby, conflagrate, let's soul rot, hit it again, dark soul, and let's launch some bolts. So I do sort of want to like have my playstyle like where I like bolt, do something, bolt again, so I can maintain the buff, like, you know, get some value out of it both times. So here's our 8 stack right here. Refresh the actual immolate. Now we should have a 10 stack rolling here. We can launch this. Here's our actual proc. There's 1 bolt. There's 2 bolts. I delayed it for a second there to show them both launching at the same time. Here's the other hasted bolt from the other stack. It feels pretty good, and our burst is actually a bit higher, I believe, than it was playing Wilfrid's. But the problem once again is that, like, at least to me on the surface, is that you're not going to have your large Infernal window, which brings your Reign of Chaos talent with it, for 3 minutes now instead of 2, you know. And if you're under haste-based effects with Wilfrid, you'll probably have a sub 2-minute Infernal. But with this build, you're still looking at baseline 3, and you're in that weird spot of, all right, do I Dark Soul at 0-2-4 and hold my Infernal, or what do I do here, you know? Back to the way it used to be a long time ago, which is pretty frustrating. So the play feels good though. You know, I haven't actually had to play, you know, the Chaos Bolt Incinerate or Chaos Bolt Conflagrate weaving playstyle in a while, but it's actually pretty fun. I enjoy it. I hope that it ends up being, you know, a better legendary than I assume it is. It feels fine, but my money's probably still on Wilfrid's in Reign at this point. Let's take a look at Embers though and see how that is. That's the one I'm really interested in seeing how it plays out, because more Shard Gen, more 4-piece procs, right? Okay, so I have made the swap to Embers here. Now, the only downside to this, or the unfortunate part, is similar to Madness, Embers also brings with it a baseline 3-minute Infernal, which, once again, Reign of Chaos, Wilfrid, shorter Infernal, more Reign of Chaos, more Blasphemy value. Now, you can sort of make the actual argument that Embers could theoretically bring more Blasphemy value because your Incinerates are generating, well, twice the amount of shards. So you could theoretically have more 4-piece procs, which leads to a similar Reign of Chaos uptime, because once again, Blasphemy Infernals with Reign of Chaos do indeed bring that Reign of Chaos buff with them. I've done a couple pulls here. I'm going to be honest, it actually, like, Embers is cool. I wanted it to work for a long time. The effect actually feels pretty good to play with, right? I overcapped a couple times, right? I'll launch 2 bolts here. Look at the Incinerate Shard Gen though. 1.8, 2.5, 2.7. Like, the Shard, I'm already overcapping a little bit. The Shard Gen's real. When you proc a million Infernals, it, you know, makes it a little rough too, but the Shard Gen's really real. I'm gonna overcap here. It just, I can't even do anything about it, right? There's so many Infernals down. There's so much going on. As to be fair, this is pretty good Reign of Chaos RNG too, right? But even when we leave this actual window here, you'll see that, okay, so the Incinerate damage or the Shard Gen's not bad in the first place. 2.5, 2.9, more if they crit, 3.9 here with the Conflict mixed in. You can get multiple cast off here, and for the most part, I've had a Blasphemy Infernal active, I feel like, for almost the entire duration of this whole cast sequence, being 48 seconds so far, right? The Shard Gen feels good. Once again, the big thing, numerically, and just overall raw damage-wise, you don't bring that strong 2-minute profile that Wilfrid's Reign of Chaos does. Now, you might even be able to make the comparison that, oh yeah, but there's so many more shards generated by Embers, you sort of can make it up with Reign of Chaos. I mean, in a sense, yes. In a sense, no, because, you know, when it comes to progression rating, being able to allocate a strong 2-minute cooldown, or 2-ish minute cooldown, with Wilfrid's and Reign of Chaos, versus 3-minute, in a lot of fights, that's pretty make or break. At least it can be, right? Under haste-based effects like Lust, Power Infusion, you can even get that Infernal cooldown to sub 2 minutes. But I also took the liberty of running a sim here. Now I'm going to say I'll make a video on double legendary sims probably in the next week or so, give or take. I simmed Embers against Wilfrid's just to see Shard Gen, honestly, but it's cool to see the raw value here and damage too, right? Now keep in mind we're losing Dom shards next tier. sims are still, I guess they're probably mostly done at this point, sort of caught up. They're still a work in progress as well. We're losing shards next tier, so this damage might not look incredibly impressive, and Destro just sucks in the first place. Also keep that in mind. But the big thing here is going in and looking at the actual shard gen, right? So here's the Wilfred's profile, playing DSS. I had to put the actual effect on the boots, it's fine. And Wilfred's, right? So here's the overall cast of Chaos Bolt. We had 51 cast, 51 basically, average over the course of, you know, these sims, right? 51 Chaos Bolts, and look at the actual shard gen here. Wilfred's, which is the profile playing Wilfred's, soul shards gained 41 from Infernal, 23.7 from Incinerate. Now keep that in mind. 51 bolts and 23.7 from Incinerate. If we go to actual embers here, it looks similar but different. 59 Chaos Bolts cast, I would say mainly due to the extra embers value you're getting, and maybe the extra value, give or take a bit with Reign of Chaos and Blasphemy Infernals and the extra uptime on them, right? Look at the shard gen here. It's 43 shards, but it's from Incinerate, and the raw Infernals here generated 34.4 comparatively to 41 from the Reign of Chaos build. So it might have actually cast less bolts with the Wilfred's build, but and generate a lot more shards via Incinerate here with the Embers build, but in the end the Wilfred's build just pulls ahead a bit more. Now if you were to like change the actual duration of these sims, the Wilfred's build will most likely go 0-2-4 with CDs, right? So the sims ending at 4.5, I guess the damage profile from that third Infernal's ending at about 430, 445, give or take. The Embers build will probably be a little more consistent overall, I'd say, looking at 9.6 essentially here, going Infernal at 0 and Infernal at 3, and depending where Dark Soul's at, it should be holding for a second Infernal, because you're not going to get a third one. Either way, it's interesting to see the shard gen is actually pretty similar when you add both them up. The bolt casts are a little more in the Embers profile, but Wilfred still just pulls ahead, plus that relevant damage profile every 2 minutes versus 3. Like I said, I think it's just gonna be hard to beat Wilfred's Reign of Chaos stuff. I really do. You know, we'll see where it goes. We'll run double legendary sims on a much larger scale, probably in about a week or so, depending on when tier sets are updated and fixed, because Demo is a bit of a disaster right now, and I want to see if they change anything there. But TLDR, Embers and Madness are cool, but I just don't really see a world where they beat Wilfred's. The Wilfred's Reign of Chaos, Blasphemy, 2-piece, 4-piece energy, I think it's just too strong. But don't get it mixed up. Destro is legitimately still really bad. It needs a buff overall. So shifting gears a bit here and looking at Demonology, I still don't think much beats Wilfred's. Really anything beats Wilfred in single target. We talked a bit briefly about Horn Nightmare and Grim Inquisitors. We'll most likely take a look at those in a video in the near future. It's hard to try and get a million different legendary combinations in one video without it being 2 hours long, right? The big thing here, double legendary wise, as far as Night Base is concerned, we'll look at Neck Warlord 2 in a minute here, by the way, playing the Decimating Bolt, Demon Bolt, crazy build, right? As far as this is concerned, Dreamweaver is simming higher still, like it always has been. Whether you end up playing Nia or Dreamweaver in the raid, though, that's still, you know, sort of up in the air. If you can get full Dreamweaver value, it sims better. But realistically, Nia with Grove Migration, the flat like stamina increase and mastery buff that it brings, typically this ends up NG out Nia or Dreamweaver a little bit in rating due to, like, you know, Dreamweaver's like stationary gameplay, lack of mobility and reach, you know, right? But regardless though, it actually feels pretty similar. So opener wise, like, we're just gonna cast our bolt, go into our Grimoire, bolt again here, launch a Vilepine, get a dog proc, that's cool, go to 5 shards, dogs, ruby, and we're just going. Now we're playing Dreamweaver here, so we're not going to actually be casting our Soul Rot until after our final hand Tyrant cast here, right? So hand, Tyrant, we Soul Rot, we hand, then we'd be Demonic Strength here if we had it. Now this is pretty cool because once again we have DSS and we have Wilfred's, right? So this gives Demonology that really unique 1 minute damage profile on top of having DSS, on top of having the crit based effect, right? Now we know Demonology is already a very good PI target, quite possibly the best in the game at single target in 9.2 because of DSS, because of the actual stacking effect of, or the multiplicative stacking of the haste from it, the additive crit effect of it, and that goes with basically every single Tyrant. Also, don't look at the damage here. The 4 pieces bugged. It's a mess. Demonology is in a disaster state on PTR right now. But the actual toolkit, you can see it here, right? So the interesting thing here is that look at my Tyrant timing. It's about 25 seconds out. Under haste-based effects like Power Infusion, Lust, and things, It's gotten to the point where I actually have to like wait to start my tyrant setup later on based on my soul rot timer, because I can't reduce the timer on soul rot like I can my tyrant. Obviously we waited a bit longer here because we're talking about it, but it's really interesting that your tyrant becomes such a short CD with Wilfred's. It's at a point where it's literally surpassing your soul rot CD. Now, I mean, in the end, holding it for, okay, 3 or 4 seconds, not the end of the world. Under like huge power infusion, less space effects, hey, ask your priests for some fairies too, right? Even wait even longer on your soul rot. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, in the end, the 1 minute profile that Tyrant has in the first place is so strong, whether it's 50 seconds or a minute 5, minute 6, it's not the end of the world if you have to wait on a little bit, right? The extra multiplicative haste value from DSS, if you play Night Fae, and the additive crit will certainly help Demonology's single target funnel profile if you're playing Night Fae. In a setting where you can get the huge soul rot, like 4 target cleave, for example, maybe a fight like Remnant of Ner'zhul, albeit, you know, in Sepulchre instead of Dust Domination, being able to put that 4 target haste amp into your Tyrant, you have some serious funnel damage coming out of that Tyrant. So depending on where it goes and depending on how tuning is, hopefully you like Demonology for next tier on potentially a couple fights. Let's take a look at some Necrolord Demonology. Alrighty, so we are Necrolord. We are playing Demonology. We are playing a spicy build. This is your big Demon Bolt build that everybody's wanted to see. The video, the build that I made videos on in the past, and been disappointed every time because it's cool, but the damage is still just not there. And that is the main reason behind that is because you're playing Sack Souls or playing Decon. Even if you change to playing Decon with this build, which spoilers ahead, Decon's still better than Sack Souls even playing this build. We're gonna play Sack Souls for, you know, the flavor, right? For the lore. This, like Decon and Grimoire, is just infinitely better, right? Stamina scaling effects, just Decon being good, Wilfred's interactions. But we're going to go with this because, hey, you know, people want to see it. Now, this build is played in arenas and all kinds of PvP. This is the big Demon Bolt one-shot build, right? We're playing all these talents: Dreadlash, Siphon, FTS, Demons, Sack Souls, Bale Spiders, Necrolord for Decimating Bolt, Shard of Annihilation Legendary, right? Guaranteed Demon Bolt crit strike chance. I'm playing Orb because I don't really care about the crit from Ruby as much, right? Because my Tyrant isn't doing damage because I'm not playing Decon. So now there's also this weird debate. I don't know what's better. I haven't played this build a whole lot, and I don't really think I'm going to, but I wanted to show it nonetheless. There's this weird debate where, like, you might want a Decimating Bolt right after your Tyrant for the actual, like, Kevin's Oozling amp because all your demons are out and things, and your Tyrant's out, right? But at the same time, you're not doing much damage from your Tyrant because you're not playing Decon. So it might be worth pushing the Bolt and Siphon back a bit until your Tyrant basically expires and you have, like, max pets out so you can get a larger Sack Souls damage amp, right? We're gonna open up here. I'm playing Bale Spiders. I'm gonna precast 2 Shadow Bolts because I just want to stack the effect. I don't know how you want to do it in PvE. It doesn't really matter to me right now, but I'm gonna Orb just to stack it so I don't forget, right? So we'll go Shadow Bolt, launch the dogs, give me a proc. If I didn't get a proc, it's okay. It is what it is. We're gonna hand Shadow Bolt the hand again, go into my Tyrant, right? Tyrant is up, and I'm going to sort of push back the actual bolt cast once again because this Tyrant will extend all these imps that are out, and I can summon more, which will give me a larger Demon Bolt cast here. I'm going to build the 5 so I can cast my dogs. I'm going to do this, cast dogs for FTS refresh, Power Siphon, Bolt, 44k, 42k, and this one's going to be a lot less because I'm not, 31k. There you go. So, like, the actual Bolt damage is there, right? Look at our damage breakdown. Bolt is 35% at this current point in time. And that's without playing Pleasure Through Pain, the PvP talent that gives you 15% more shadow damage if you're playing Succubus, right? The actual, like, value is there for Demon Bolt, but unfortunately just not playing Decon means you just aren't doing the damage that you can while playing Decon, right? Now, one other cool thing is that, like, your actual Bolt and Siphon, Bolt's 45 seconds, Siphon's 30, you'll hold your Siphon for your Bolt. For the most part, as long as you're power siphoning and bolting at the same time in your Tyrant window, you should pretty much have, like, the option of just bolting, like Decimating Bolting and, like, siphoning on cooldown and having it line up with every other Tyrant. The 31k, 32k bolt here outside of your window, right? So it works out decently with FTS and the interactions and stuff. And the damage output right here is actually not terrible. But the more I've tested it, the more I played with it, it's just lacking, right? Like, it's just not Decon Demo. Now, I wouldn't be surprised with Necrolord simming a tiny bit higher than Night Fae in pure single target for Demonology if you ended up actually playing Power Siphon over, like, Demonic Calling, depending on how long things, how things go, I guess, heading into the tier, right? Sort of up in the air still, but that's a distinct possibility. Either way, like, I've enjoyed playing this build a good bit. It's been fun, but it just sort of feels bad when you know that decon is like infinitely better and you're just not playing it for whatever reason. As far as like PvP goes, yeah, play it in arenas, I'm sure it's great, but you know, the one-shot potential is probably not going to be there on a boss when you're, you know, hitting a target that has 3 million health versus a target having, you know, 40k health, right? So I would assume this build probably pretty strong in arenas and things in PvP, not as strong in PvP or in PvE, right? But we'll see where it goes. It's there, but like I said, look at our tyrant damage. It did 49k over 2 tyrants. I ran the math last night testing this. Different damage profiles, obviously, right? This one's a lot more based around Demon Bolt. It would take 15 plus minutes of me hitting this dummy for my tyrant to equal what 3 tyrants will, roughly, playing decon with Grim War, with Vile Fiend, with Wilfred's, right? Yeah, so we'll leave it at that. Necrolord decon demo looks pretty good too. We'll make a video on that at some point. People want to see it. The bolts are cool. The bolts are big. I'm sure if I potted, they'd be over 50k here. There's probably some more min-maxing that can be done with this build that I didn't do here, but I just don't think it can hold a candle to decon. Decon's just too good. If any of the effects for Demon Bolt stacked multiplicatively, it probably would, right? But even if your bolts are hitting hard in the first place, it's just that like decon's just good and the bolts are a bit wishy-washy, and this build also sort of like tedious to micromanage. We'll see where it goes. Cool interactions, but I still think decon's just gonna be better. Okay, so Necrolord Malefic Wrath Affliction. This is the build that we've been talking about a lot over the course of I guess early PTR now. It's been discussed a pretty good bit because of it simming like 1000 DPS higher than Night Fae single target AF with Malefic Wrath. Now that might actually change a bit with Drain Soul becoming more relevant with the 10% proc chance, probably making Drain Soul more relevant for Night Fae, but at the same time that still increases a good bit for Necrolord too, right? I'm glad I found the dummy at low health. Watch my damage when I hit my Drain Soul with Malefic Wrath stacked up in my opener. Now this opener is going to be, I guess, like a sort of like an execute damage profile, right? Watch my damage spike when we hit execute, because like it's actually pretty insane the value that we get, right? So we're gonna haunt UA, Agony, pop my Ruby, Corruption, Siphon, PS, pop Dark Soul. I think we need to bolt now, one of the two, I don't know. Rapture, 1, 2, 3. I'll do 4. Watch the damage spike here. We're at 13k. We end at 25k. That Drain Soul is 45% of our damage right now. The execute damage this profile brings is strong. It is really, really good. And this dummy is literally dead. So we're getting the max decimating bolt damage amp, which means a bigger damage amp off Shard Annihilation, bigger damage effects from Malefic Wrath stacking, Drain Soul execute, Withering Bolt stacking, all the effects stacking upon themselves, right? But the effect is just really, really strong. Even when it comes to like pure single target, it's a bit lower than Night Fae. When it comes to like sustained single target at the beginning of the fight, in the middle of the fight, it starts amping up a bit more. But in the end, like I said, that single target at the end of the fight becomes really, really strong. You want to bolt before your PS, by the way, here. I'm just not paying attention. It becomes really, really strong. Now, I'm not saying Affliction with Malefic Wrath has the best execute in the game, because in the end, I don't really know what warriors do now and stuff. I think DKs are good at it too. But man, that damage is real. Look at the actual value of Drain Soul right now. It's 47% of our damage. The max crit hit 35,471, and that's not a full drain. That's each tick of the drain. And remember, every tick of that drain crits, and the crit damage is increased by 50 due to Shard of Annihilation. And this is what we're talking about. This is the potential of the Necrolord Malefic Wrath Shard of Annihilation build. This is the upside. The downside is that Necrolord really doesn't have any kind of 2+ target applications. Honestly, you really just want to drain in single target, and that's basically it, right? That's where like Night Fae, DSS, and like the big haste crit amp and spread AoE comes into play, right? But Covenants are swappable next patch. You can play whatever you want, right? I'm not sure if there's going to be a fight next year that wants big executing things, but if there is, or honestly, even if AF just gets buffed, right? this build could be real. I did even Fleshcraft before, and I keep forgetting to do that. You lose Soul Shape, you lose the 2+ target applications that, like, you know, Night Fae has. But in single target, this build's solid. It can be really good. It's a bit tedious. You don't want your Wrath to drop. You don't want to interrupt your Drain Soul when you're casting the big one, right? But dude, he had like, I don't know, what, 2 big Drain cast? It dealt 500,000 damage. Pretty impressive. I would definitely keep an eye on this build heading into 9.2. Depending on the fights in the raid, looks pretty solid, and a lot of fun too. So looking at Affliction AoE with potentially some Mythic Plus implications here. Now, we looked at single target with Necrolord. It's basically the same once again as Night Fae. You maintain Malefic Wrath, you Rapture to maintain the buff, you cast Drain Souls, life's great, right? I don't know that this build's going to end up being better than the Seed spam in Mythic Plus, but the issue with the 2-piece, 4-piece now is, like, when it comes to heavy AoE, playing the Seeds build, it doesn't really give you... it's not either a Rapture or Seed cast. It's just Rapture, right? And in the end, hey, it's a free Rapture cast. I'll take it. I'll cast it. It is what it is. It's free value. Blizzard ended up adding a condition to this. If you're playing Absolute Corruption, whenever you cast Malefic Rapture, your corruptions like pulsate or like pulse on the target. I think it's called like predetermined corruption, something like that. It's another damage-based event. We'll see it in the breakdown here in a minute. Basically, it gives you a corruption tick whenever you cast your Rapture. So the 4-piece, when you're casting Drain Soul, free Rapture cast. If you're playing AC, your AC's tick essentially again. And during your big like burst windows, if you're playing multi-target AC fights, you get essentially double dot damage. It's pretty interesting. Now, one of AF's biggest issues in Mythic Plus right now is that it does really good AoE with Decaying Soul Satchel, which is on our belt here. And so the Seed spam, right? And to be fair, you can still do good AoE by spamming Rapture. Now, at a certain point, if you're pulling like 20 mobs and AoEing it all down, you're obviously not going to be able to dot them all with corruptions and agonies and UAs and full dots, right? Which Seed is, or I guess So is better at dealing with those kind of large pulls. But if you're making the 6-7 target pulls that you see in most places, right, or mobs that are going to live for a long time, this build could be pretty relevant, right? Because outside of like Malefic Wrath, what legendary would you really even want to play in Plus for Warlock, right? Corruption Slow Ring is gone. It's just like baseline corruption increase, which would be okay, but I don't think it's as relevant as people think it is when it comes to that, because packs are dying fast, so you can just play Seed and blow them on the ground anyways, right? Wrath of Consumption can be good in Plus, for sure. It definitely can. It depends on the dungeon, and it still very well might end up being to play over Malefic Wrath, which we'll get to here in a minute. But it sort of depends on the dungeon, if you can chain the effect, and at the same time, I played with it before. It is good. Dots don't do as much of our damage as they used to in the past in like Legion and things, right? At the same time, the 2-piece with like the pulsing ACs, I would assume is indeed probably increased by Wrath Consumption. But outside of that, like I don't think we really have an issue for more shard gen, or a need for more shard gen in Plus, right? If you're shard sniping and moving your way around, I don't think you really need it, right? And as far as synergy is concerned, you can just play synergy, but it's one of those weird legendaries where it's like it's okay. It's just like a flat damage increase if it procs, and if it doesn't, it's just whatever, you know. It's just sort of there, right? I was never a huge fan of playing synergy in 9.0 and Nathria. We just did because, like, what else are we gonna play, you know? But Malefic Wrath with Decaying Soul Satchel could potentially shore up Affliction's biggest weakness in Mythic Plus. Malefic Wrath is a very large single target increase for Affliction. Now, the build might shift a bit here, but at the same time, if you're playing AC with a 2-piece baked in, there's not like a huge reason to play So, barring the big AoE that it brings, right? You just play Writhe for more, agony damage. But if you're playing AC, you could also just play PS, maybe Vitalate, but PS is another dot application, no shard cost, increased Withering Bolt value, which means more increased Malefic Wrath value, more increased single target value. This build has been really spicy in testing. The actual AoE that it puts out, it still feels like Decaying Soul Satchel, like Seed spam levels of AoE. Now, albeit, okay, we will burst a little higher if you played So here, but the consistency, the 4-piece proc and giving more relevant raptures in a sense, it feels really good, right? Like we can look at the actual damage here, just opening up, say it's a 4-target trash pack and Plus, right? Precast our Seed. I'll pop my Dark Soul early here because I'm lazy. Get our agonies rolling, right? Here's the UA for the 4-piece. Put that up. Bang, bang. PS. Soul Rot. Pop the Dark Glare. Rapture. Watch our damage. we're at 40k. We're over 40k, 43k as a free proc, 45k, right? And the cool thing is, while casting Rapture with Malefic Wrath, you can maintain your buff incredibly easy and provide a big amount of like priority single target damage in plus as well. And if it drops on a trash pack, okay, not the end of the world, because it's more AoE based, right? But it's pretty easy to maintain too with 4 targets and Rapture procs coming in, right? We burst to 45k playing this build. It might seem a bit jank, like a bit of a hybrid build, and I thought the same, but after testing it out, it's actually been really impressive. And by the way, look at our dot duration here, because of the 2-piece 4-piece. My agonies are at 13 seconds still. I haven't refreshed them one time. My UA is coming at 10. I'm going to Rapture and refresh here once because I have Soul Rot coming around at 8 seconds. Look at my agony duration here. It's actually insane how long it is, right? We don't have to refresh dots like ever. My PS is up. Here comes Soul Rot again. Here comes the big burst window. My dots don't expire. I'm over half a minute now in this agony, and we're still going, right? For this in, we're still going. Like, it's at 35 seconds. My UA is at half a minute. It's actually insane. You put up your dots, you really don't even refresh, and you just burn one target down. And when it comes to a single target boss encounter, you've got PS. You're not playing Siphon Life, but you got PS. You have Malefic Wrath. And that's the thing. Av is already good at doing large burst AoE damage and plus, right? Well, what was his biggest issue? The lack of single target. But Malefic Wrath can bring a large amount of funnel damage. Even in heavy AoE, Drain Soul's 8% of our damage here, right? Rapture's hitting harder because it's buffed by PS. PS is 6% here. This is essentially damage you don't even have playing the Seeds build, right? I'm not saying this build is going to necessarily be better in 9.2, but I've been really impressed with this combination so far. Strong single target, strong AoE. What's not to love? I want to get into some keys on PTR and test this thing out because it looks pretty promising. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this video gave you all a decent look, a better idea, understanding of some pretty cool and I guess unique double legendary combinations for Warlocks heading into 9.2. And tomorrow, I guess today's raid testing because it's 5 a.m. Yeah, so there are a lot of combinations I did not test here. FTS, big dog builds. I'm sure there are legendaries I respect that you want to see tested. So if you do, drop them down in the comment section below and I'll try and take a look and see what I can do over the next week or so. I'll also probably be running sims over the next week, give or take as well, once they fix tier sets, if there's any more tuning. I wouldn't mind waiting for next PTR build to see if there's any class tuning coming out, or covenant tuning, or legendary tuning, or conduit tuning, or soulbind tuning. All that tuning really hasn't taken place with all of raid testing being over. But yeah, that's a video for the day. So yeah, also let me know what you think of these combinations down below in the comment section. I'm curious to get y'all's takes on things. Any weak or something you see here, once again, all for free on my Twitch. You want to swing by, hang out, grab them, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. Also, one more massive shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys once again a million times for all support. The 9.2 Warlock spreadsheet should indeed be going up by this Friday after raid testing within the next 48 hours or so, give or take. Heads up, the tier 3 fellow guard rank from a Patreon or higher does indeed get early access to that. So thanks for watching, guys. Once again, if you want to see more WoW content, be sure to smash the sub button below and hit the like button right down there as well. And I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.